My grandfather was a CPA. He was an immigrant from Russia, and he became an accountant and a CPA in the 1930s and had his own practice in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Hello! This is CPA Career Path Podcast with Rosey Flaherty, CPA MSA, where we dive into thrilling journeys into the world of accounting.
Hey, Amy, thank you so much for being on my podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So we have Amy as a special guest in our podcast today. Amy is the CEO, keynote speaker, workplace transformation consultant. And before we go deeper in Amy's CPA journey, Amy, could you please just introduce a little bit about yourself to the audience?
Sure. So my name is Amy Vetter. I am the CEO of the B3 Method Institute, which the B3 method is business plus balance equals bliss. And it's a model I created to help people be able to find that work-life harmony between the career they desire, but not sacrifice anything in their personal life.
One of your CPE, and I really like it. It was
thank
amazing.
you.
And I met Amy at the AI CPA Global Woman Leadership last November, and I love your speaking topic. So I was like, Amy, can you please be on my podcast? So I was very happy that now you are here to be a special guest on my podcast.
Yeah.
So Amy, start from the beginning. When you start in your college, why did you decide to go with the accounting major?
So it actually starts way before that. My grandfather was a CPA. He was an immigrant from Russia, and he became an accountant and a CPA in the 1930s and had his own practice in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or St. Paul and Minneapolis. So I had always heard about that growing up. My mother didn't decide to become a CPA, but I think she always thought it was a mistake, and she became an art teacher. So from a very young age, probably since I was 12, I was saying I was going to be a CPA. And I don't know that I really knew what being a CPA was, but was saying that. And my mom had small businesses that she eventually opened, which were maid services in multiple cities. So I was working in her business from a young age in the office and learning about business, going to networking events, really just seeing where business owners struggle. So I think once I got to college, I really understood my purpose behind why I wanted to become a CPA so I could help small business owners.
I'm just curious, what did you see in your grandfather that you feel like I want to be like him when I grew up?
So he died when I was very young. However, it was the stories about him. So he, being an immigrant and coming from an immigrant family, the family was very poor. And he was the first one to go to college. And because of his accounting degree and becoming a CPA, he was able to support his siblings going to college as well. And I could also see how much of an impact it had not only on my mom's life, but in my generation as well, that security that you get from the accounting profession, choosing that as your profession, and how it impacted so many generations later. But I would also hear stories that I think are very different than from today, but because it was an immigrant neighborhood, he was bartering services. So meaning that, he would get a fur coat for my mom and do the tax return for a client, or get symphony tickets instead of payment. So I think there was a lot of, definitely business owners and accountants helping each other so that they could achieve their dreams in the US. And that always was something that I had in my head about that collaboration to really help business owners be successful and achieve their dreams.
I see. And so after you graduate, you got your first job at KPMG and you worked there for 3 years. So do you still recall your experience
Mhm.
at the very beginning of your career at KPMG at Big Four? How many hours did you work? What did you learn the most? What did you like? What did you dislike the most?
So, yeah, so I had co-opted in college. At my college, you went to school a quarter and then you worked a quarter in the field. And so I had my first co-op job, I think when I was a sophomore in college, and that one was with Chiquita Brands International in their tax department. And that really helped me to understand I didn't want to be in tax. And I was, I hadn't done audit, but, what I was told about it was you went out to more clients and got to see their businesses. So that was, when I was in school, and I don't know how much it's evolved, but, you really thought there was only these two paths of tax and audit in the accounting profession, which there's just so many paths that you can take now. But because I decided I didn't want to do tax, I chose audit and got hired by KPMG. I was a member of Beta Alpha Psi in college and had done networking and met the partners of these different firms, and you got a feel for the culture of their organizations. And KPMG in Cincinnati resonated with me the most at that time, so I did start an audit. I do have to say, and I do give warnings to recent graduates that your first job, you may love it, but you probably won't, because you're definitely learning what the profession is about, and you cannot do the later jobs without having that experience of, doing that initial work. I would say for myself, I wasn't like, I didn't think it was awesome at all. I loved working for KPMG. I loved working for the different companies. I did like the experience and audit of being able to meet all these different people and different specialties in these organizations I never would have met. What I also thought was great about audit was you got the opportunity to go inside different businesses and see if you would even want to work in some of these companies, because you really are in the inside of it, meeting people and seeing how the cultures work or how their workflow is. And there were many of the clients that I was like, oh, thank goodness I didn't take a job at this company or that company. So I think there's benefits on both sides of just kind of exploring what looks good to you. And I think that's one of the most important things in your first job, is to keep your eyes wide open to all the different skill sets you encounter and see like what would you want that future path to look like.
It's interesting that you mentioned you didn't like tax, and then you like audit at your early career stage. I didn't know that I like tax at the beginning. I just assumed that I love audit. I assumed that I hate tax. I didn't even try it. And then when I did audit, and I was like, it was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that when you actually do it, you will feel it. If you fit in that position or you fit in that career or not.
Totally.
Yeah. So you work at KPMG for 3 years, move up as a senior accountant, and then you move to work at Ryder Systems. It looks like you also relocate from Ohio to Florida as well. Is that the reason why you changed your job?
Yeah. So KPMG, I was looking to possibly transfer to South Florida. At the time, my mom wanted to move to South Florida. So my then husband and I decided, we were going to move with her. And the advantage of going to Ryder was they were going to pay for my relocation there. And so I took that opportunity to have our move paid for. And that was really interesting, because I think there's a lot of things told to you when you're in college of what you'll like or not like, or you're listening to everybody's opinions. And just like you said, there's no way to listen to someone else of what you might like until you experience it yourself to see what fits. But one of the things I was told was, oh, you don't want to go into internal audit. You want to be in external audit. And I took an internal audit job at Ryder, and the reason I initially took it was because it was a rotational program where you worked in that department for 2 years, but then you got an opportunity to move out of that department after you've learned the organization in internal audit. So I took that role and I loved internal audit. So and it could be in the way that they did it as well. It can be different in different organizations, but it was very operational focused. And I loved getting in the field, and the side of the business I was on was the logistics side. And the logistics side of that business meant that you were looking at contracts where goods were moved by Ryder through truck, train, sea, air, depending on that. And we were warehousing and putting things in order of how it was going to go on an assembly line, like for Toyota or Whirlpool or companies like that. So I found it fascinating. I learned so much about the Department of Transportation and how the trucking industry works and how warehousing works. I was able to move into another role there of global financial analysis, where I worked on the contracts for these logistics contracts, and I worked with attorneys and the warehouse managers and logistics engineers, and you just weren't involved with so many different facets of the company and understanding how they all fit together and trying to find the best scenarios so that Ryder could not only sell the deal but be profitable as well, because it's hard to be profitable in logistics. So I just thought that job was great. The thing that shifted in my life was getting pregnant. And so prior to that, and the world was very different then. There wasn't any kind of work from home. It was, there weren't online ways to get into your work and that sort of thing. And I got put on bed rest in that job, and I learned how to do that job from my bed, which wasn't really resting. I ended up working more, but I was trying to keep up, and that there weren't very many women in that industry because it was a trucking industry. A lot of people were brought up in that trucking world, even if they were on the logistics side. I was, I think, 26 or 27 at the time, trying to act like, oh, getting pregnant is not going to be an issue. I can still do all this. And I had a preemie. So, I mean, this is where, best laid plans. But once that happened, that shifted everything for me, because I was driving to Miami from Fort Lauderdale. If anyone's familiar with South Florida traffic, it isn't the safest. And so trying to think about putting a preemie in a car and they had a daycare facility, but I was afraid to drive with him at the time. So I actually started shifting my work at that time. And that's what's amazing about being a CPA, is there's so many ways you can do this job. And I decided to open my own business at the time. So, and it's what today is called client advisory services or client accounting services. It wasn't a thing at the time. I just wanted to get back to helping small business owners. So we would outsource bookkeeping, controllership, CFO work, eventually helped with technology implementation of accounting software. So that gave me more of the flexibility I needed as my kids were young to be able to continue working, because I really enjoyed working and accomplishing in that area. I didn't want to lose that, but give me the flexibility that I needed that I couldn't have had at Ryder.
Wow, it's pretty impressive that when you mentioned about you were pregnant and then try to work from the bed, that sounds horrible, to be honest. Because I am expecting now and I work from home, and I feel like a lot of time I feel like it's so difficult to get up, leave the bed and put myself to be in front of the desk when it literally just downstairs and upstairs.
Exactly. Well, and it got so bad because, at the time, again, things were a lot different, that cell phones weren't as big of a thing at the time. So, I would be called all day long on, my house phone because I was putting deals together. So the salespeople still needed me, and people were working on a global schedule. So like when I was in the office, I had a phone that could put them on hold, but like this did not happen at home. So I was actually working more. And then, if I think about like the worst part of this too, because I really was like, I loved this job, and I was like, this is all going to work. This is going to work when I have him. I would have to go to the doctor every week because I had bed rest. So let's see, I was on bed rest starting at week 28. So for those of you out of 40 weeks, so I would have to go to the doctor every week to get checked as well. So I would be on these phone calls. I'd switch to my cell phone. And then when the doctor would come in, I would give it to my ex-husband to listen at the time because I didn't want to miss anything or them to fire me because I wasn't available. So it was just a whole different world than it is today. And we're just so fortunate for technology to be the way it is that you can have the flexibility now.
Yeah, wow. You had a very strong work ethic at that point.
Yes, I was very driven. Yeah.
Pretty impressive. After everything going on with your body, the doctor show up and you still worried about the job, the phone calls.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
amazing.
I think that, well, and I do think, that time in your life is hard. You're trying to build your career, you're trying to build a family all at the same time, and you're not financially stable. At least my husband and I weren't, so, we had paid for everything ourselves. And so a lot of that too was fear that I was going to lose a job or not, because at the time with maternity leave too, which is very different now. I mean, you really only got 6 weeks, and then there was like 6 weeks of disability non-paid, which I couldn't figure out how all that was going to work. And so when I had to go on bed rest, and I ended up having him early, but still it was 6 weeks on bed rest before I had him. I was worried about that cutting into my maternity leave. And, so there was a lot of things going on in my head at the time so I can maintain everything and make sure, everything was going to be okay. It's a stressful time of life, I think.
It is. People always say that you should enjoy your pregnancy journey. It's not easy.
No.
You deal with a
And
lot
they
of
also
body
say
changes.
it's so cute until you're pregnant. And you're like, I don't feel cute. Like, yeah.
Feel like I feel like my face is so full with all the weight gain, and
Oh,
they
I
need
don't
to
even
get
see
the
it.
picture. I need
Yeah.
to get the picture for the marketing team to put on the company website. And I was like, I tried all different angles to show it to that I don't look that too full in the picture. But I cannot hide
You
how
are
much weight I
only
put on my
seeing it.
face.
Yeah, you are only seeing it. There's so many. I mean, I was actually just telling this story last week to my son. I don't think I'd ever told him, but there's so many things that go through your head when you're pregnant that no one else like is worried about. But I for sure thought that I was not going to have time to highlight my hair anymore once I had the baby, and I was on bed rest. So I was like, well, I gotta like get my hair back to my natural color, like right now. And so I went to some random salon I had never been to, and he dyed my hair. I mean, it was like blackish red. I mean, to be nice. And I came home and I'm miserable because like now it's even worse, right? And then my water breaks that night. So there's like literally no pictures of when my son was born because I was like, why I look awful.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so no fixing that for a while.
But you mentioned that after that you decide to leave the company and then start your own company. And
Yeah.
a lot of time people worried that if I start my own company, I may end up working more hours because it's going to be like another baby. I have to start everything by myself. I have to constantly think about it and worry about it, how to grow it, how to make it better tomorrow, how to maintain the cash flow and income with all the stress coming from pregnancy, from the baby, newborn baby, and now have a new business as well. How do you manage all that stress and then also balance all your energy to be able to handle the jobs and then the baby?
So again, it was a very different period of time. There wasn't much like part-time options at the time for working, and I knew I needed to work. I did try to work something out with Ryder, and their answer to me at the time, because I said, I've proven that I can work from home some days, so can we work that out? And they told me I could work 8 to 5 there and then 6 to 10 at home. So that wasn't gonna work. So things that would not be said in this day and age. I really couldn't. Now what I did do to offset it, I definitely had a fear of not making enough money. So I was actually doing per diem work in the beginning as well. So there was a couple audit practices near me that were small practices that I would get paid to come in for the day or two during the week. And I would do that. So that helped in the beginning of my business. I also was an adjunct professor that would help me supplement the business as well. That I did it in person and online. So you're really bringing back the memories. But yeah, I was always trying to figure out how I made sure I had income coming in while I was starting up this business. And it wasn't an easy business to start up because it wasn't like a tax and audit practice that's compliance oriented. People have to do it. I was going to small business owners and saying, let me help you understand your accounting. Let's make sure it's clean, that you're setting goals for your business. Like that's a whole different type of business. So I had to be out networking, going to chamber events and networking with other CPAs, where honestly, I got a lot of business from tax accountants because they didn't want to do the type of work I was doing and I didn't want to do tax. So I was able to refer back and forth that way and started building my business. So eventually, after my second son, and I did get sick from that pregnancy, I got acquired by a CPA firm that was in South Florida. And so I became a partner there at that time after I had built up that business. And for what you're saying is like, I didn't want the volatility of the business. Like I wanted some peace of mind that there was more than me just having the business.
But it seems like you do a lot more work. You had to go out to network. You had to teach at the school. You also had to do additional jobs on the side to maintain the finance.